Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep into this idea of God's love today.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically how it motivates us to act,
Yeah.
and how we share that love with others.
Uh-huh.
So we've got a Christian podcast episode
Okay.
and some texts
Yeah.
we're going to be looking at.
Cool.
And one of the things that really stuck out to me is
Yeah.
this idea that God's love
Mm.
isn't passive.
Right.
Like it's not just this feeling we have.
Yeah.
It's an active force
Mm-hmm.
that can inspire us to do some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that the source material does so well.
Oh, yeah.
It takes this idea of overflowing love and really pushes us to think about what it means.
Right.
You know, it's not just about feeling good.
Right.
It's about being moved to action.
Yeah.
It's like that analogy with the cup overflowing.
Okay.
But instead of just water spilling everywhere,
Right.
imagine that overflow being directed towards meeting the needs of others.
I see what you mean. So how does that play out in our own lives? Where do we see this overflowing love concept in action?
Well, the source material talks a lot about this concept of
Right.
having a burden for souls.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that phrase before.
Yeah.
But honestly, I've always been a little confused by it.
Yeah, it can sound a bit strange.
Yeah. What does it actually mean to have a burden for someone's soul?
Right. It's not like we're saying it's a bad thing,
Right.
but it emphasizes this deep care and concern
Okay.
that we have for other people,
Uh-huh.
especially for their spiritual well-being. It's like
Right.
this weight that we carry, this sense of responsibility
Yeah,
to share God's love with others
I see.
who haven't experienced it yet.
So it's not just feeling bad for someone.
Yeah.
It's feeling compelled to do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we have to act.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
they use this example of Lester Sumrall in the source material.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of him.
He was this evangelist who was driven by this burden to reach other people.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. He dedicated his whole life
Mm.
to spreading this message of God's love.
It makes you think about what lengths we might go to for the people that we really care about.
Totally.
But before we get too caught up in all the doing,
Yeah.
the source material also talks about the importance
Yes.
of having that personal connection with God.
Absolutely.
That's where this overflowing love comes from.
It's the source.
Right.
It's like, how can you share something that you haven't experienced yourself?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. It's like trying to pour from an empty cup.
You can't give what you don't have.
Exactly.
Right.
We have to nurture our own relationship with God first.
Okay. So how do we do that?
Well, through prayer,
Oh, okay.
reading scripture,
Mhm.
spending time in reflection.
So those are all ways that we
Yeah.
can kind of fill up our own cup
Exactly.
so that we can pour out to others.
It's how we get to know God's love deeply.
So where does the listener fit into all of this? How can they take these big concepts and actually apply them to their own lives?
Yeah, that's where the action points
Oh, yeah, I saw this in the source
to
material.
the source material come in.
Oh,
They
excellent.
give us some practical steps that we can take
Cool.
to put this overflowing love into action.
I like it.
And I think this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Especially if you're looking for ways to make a real difference in the world.
All right, let's get into it. So we talked about why this overflowing love is so important.
Yeah,
But how do we actually live it out?
that's a great question.
What are some things we can do?
Well, the source material had this whole section
Okay.
called action points.
Okay, yeah, I remember seeing that.
And I think that's where we really start to see how this all comes together.
Okay, cool.
It's one thing to talk about these concepts,
Right.
but it's another to actually put them into practice.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's break down these action points.
Okay, sounds good.
What's the first one?
Well, the first one is about cultivating compassion.
Okay, compassion.
And they're not just talking about feeling sorry for people.
Right, just having a fleeting feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's about really asking God to help us
Mm-hmm.
to develop a genuine care for others.
So it's like an active choice
It is.
to be more compassionate.
And to notice the people around us.
Yeah, sometimes I think we can be so focused on our own stuff
Oh, absolutely.
that we forget to look around and see
Yeah.
who might need some help.
It's easy to get caught up in our own little world.
It is. And the next action point
Yeah.
is about prioritizing connection,
Oh, that's a good one.
which I think ties in really well with what we were just saying.
It does, yeah.
Because if we're not taking time to connect with God,
Mm.
how can we expect to be filled with his love?
Exactly. We can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
We have to take time to recharge.
Okay, so what does that look like practically?
Well, it can be different for everyone.
Yeah.
But the source material suggests things like
Right.
spending time in prayer reading scripture.
Yeah.
Even just taking a few minutes to be quiet and reflect.
I know that's something I personally struggle with.
I think a lot of people do.
It's hard to make time for that sometimes.
It is, but it's so important.
Okay, so we're cultivating compassion.
Yes.
We're prioritizing connection. What's the next step?
This one is all about looking for opportunities
Okay.
to share God's love.
Okay, like what kind of opportunities?
Well, they talk about looking for open doors,
Okay, like that?
which I think is such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Because it's not always going to be obvious.
Right, it might not be some big grand gesture.
Exactly. Sometimes it's just about being present
Mhm.
and aware of the needs around us.
So being open to those unexpected moments.
Yeah, like a conversation with a coworker
Yeah.
who's going through a hard time,
Yeah.
or maybe helping a neighbor with their groceries.
It's the little things
It
sometimes
really is.
that make a big difference.
And that leads us to the last action point,
Okay, let's hear it.
which is all about letting our actions speak louder than words.
Oh, I love that one.
Me too.
Because sometimes we can get so caught up in saying the right things,
Yeah.
but it's our actions that really show people
Exactly.
what we believe.
You know, the source material emphasizes that acts of service are one of the most powerful ways
Wow.
to demonstrate God's love.
I like that. And again,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be something huge or complicated. It can be simple things.
Absolutely. Like offering to babysit for a single parent.
Okay.
Volunteering at a soup kitchen.
Yeah.
Even just writing a card to someone who's feeling down.
Those are all great ideas.
And it's a reminder that anyone can do this.
Yeah, you don't have to be a saint or anything
No, not at all.
to share God's love.
We just need a willing heart.
And a little bit of courage
That's all.
to step outside of our comfort zones.
The source material even talks about this idea of being the hands and feet of Jesus.
I love that analogy.
too.
Because it's like we're taking this love that we've been given
Yes.
and we're extending it outwards.
We become tangible expressions of God's grace.
And I think that ties back to this idea
Yeah.
of the ripple effect
Absolutely.
that we talked about earlier.
Because when we act out of love,
Mm-hmm.
it creates these ripples
Yeah.
that extend far beyond ourselves.
We might not even realize
Right.
how many people we're touching.
Exactly.
But even the smallest acts of kindness
hmm
can have a huge impact.
It's like that quote,
Oh, yeah. What is it?
what we do for ourselves dies with us,
Okay.
but what we do for others and the world remains and is immortal.
Wow. That's powerful.
Even if our own lives are like little drops of water,
Yeah.
those drops can create ripples
Mm-hmm.
that touch countless others.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the nature of this overflowing love,
Yes.
and we've looked at some practical ways to live it out.
But there's one more piece that
Yeah.
we haven't talked about yet.
What's that?
Sharing the gospel.
Okay, yeah. That's a big part of the source material.
It is.
And I think it's something that a lot of people can feel a little bit nervous about.
For sure, it can be a sensitive topic.
Yeah, because no one wants to come across as pushy
Right?
or judgmental,
Exactly.
but it's still an important part
It's
in living out this overflowing love.
And it's interesting how the source material approaches this topic.
Oh, yeah.
It emphasizes gentleness and wisdom.
Okay.
It's not about forcing our beliefs on others.
Right. It's not about winning an argument or anything.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about sharing the hope and joy that we've found in our relationship with God
Yeah.
in a way that respects where the other person is at.
So how do we actually do that?
Well, I think that's where it gets really interesting.
Right,
I
so
mean, we need to unpack this a bit further.
Let's pick this up in part 3.
Right.
Okay. So we left off talking about sharing the gospel and how to do it without,
Right.
being pushy or judgmental.
Yeah, it's all about the approach.
Right.
Like the source material talks about
Yeah.
gentleness and wisdom.
Okay.
And that really resonated with me because it's not about like shoving our beliefs
Yeah.
down someone's throat.
It's more about sharing
Yes.
like the hope and the joy
Joy, yeah.
that we've experienced
Through
through
our
faith.
And doing it in a way that respects the other person.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
Well, they use this phrase in the source material that I really liked.
Okay.
It says, prepare our words so that we can speak of your love with wisdom and gentleness.
Oh, I like that.
It's like when something amazing happens to you
Uh-huh.
and you want to tell someone about it.
You don't just blurt it out.
Yeah.
You kind of find the right moment.
Yes. You find the right way to say it.
Right. So it makes sense to them.
Sharing your faith should be like that.
So it's more about those natural openings in conversations.
Yes.
Not forcing it.
Right.
letting it flow organically.
And it goes back to what we were talking about before,
Right.
with compassion and really seeing people.
Right, like if we're genuinely interested
Yeah.
in someone's well-being
Then we'll find ways to connect with them.
on a deeper level.
And sometimes those conversations naturally lead to talking about faith.
There's that quote from the source material that says,
Yeah.
heaven rejoices over even one lost soul that returns.
Mm.
And it made me think, even if someone doesn't,
Yeah.
fully embrace our beliefs,
Right.
just planting that seed
Just that little seed.
of hope
Or offering a different perspective.
could be really powerful.
It could be. Yeah, we may never know the impact.
Right, because it's like that ripple effect
Absolutely.
we were talking about earlier.
Just like a drop of water
Yeah.
creates those ripples
Mm-hmm.
that spread
A
out.
simple conversation
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
faith.
Can have a huge impact.
Wow. It's amazing how this all connects.
It is.
Like we start with compassion, then we prioritize connection,
Yes.
which strengthens our own faith
Exactly.
and gives us something to share.
And then those actions and conversations ripple outwards
It's,
in ways we can't even imagine.
this deep dive has been so insightful.
Me too. I've learned a lot.
It's given me a lot to think about
Yeah.
how I'm living out God's love.
And how we can all share it.
Yeah. So as we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to leave you with a question.
All right.
The source material says, heaven rejoices over even one lost soul that returns. So regardless of your beliefs,
Yeah.
how might this idea inspire you to reach out to others
Oh, that's good.
who feel lost or disconnected or in need of support?
Maybe it's a call to be more present,
More
more compassionate.
willing to help
Even the smallest act of kindness.
can make a difference.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
We hope you feel inspired
And empowered.
to go out and make a difference in the world.
Sharing that overflowing love.
Wherever you go,